today I'm going to be turning these jeans into a wraparound skirt. The jeans are in good condition, they're just not really my style, so I thought I'd change it up a bit. They are roughly my size, maybe just a little bit bigger, so I've made a bit of a plan, because what I like about upcycling challenges is that you kind of have to go with what you've got. So I'm going to see how much I can use, you know, like the tie, some of the pockets and the fly zip, and let's see what happens. Here are some of the things you will need for our upcycle challenge. We have our jeans, got a ruler, chalk pencil, tape measure, some fabric scissors and snips. We've also got a buttonhole foot along with a button, some pins, needle and thread, sewing machine, quite crucial, and our iron, so an ironing board as well. I'll be using my own skirt to get the measurements, so you could have a skirt or a pair of shorts that's the desired length, and then we'll need to take our own measurements. First things first, we're going to want to measure the full length of our skirt. I'm going to actually use a skirt that I wear all the time and use that as my length guide. So I'm just going to fold it in half, so I've got my hip seams matching, and I'm going to measure the length, so it's about 42 centimetres. I'm going to add on about 5 centimetres just so there's room for error when it comes to doing my hem. So what I've done here in prep to cutting off the length is I've folded the jeans in half so that the side seams both match. So these are our hips, outer hip here, and then we've got our crotch seam there, and I've just tried to make sure that everything is lying as flat as it can be. So these are lining up, and I'm going to measure down 47 centimetres from this out the top of the waistband all the way down, so around about here, and then I'm going to cut across, and I'm going to be cutting through all the layers of both legs. So what you can do, you could either do it by eye, but if you're feeling a bit, you can get a ruler and square across. Now we've chopped our length up, we're going to keep our spare trouser legs to the side because this will help us create the wrap on our skirt. And then basically it's the more tedious side of upcycling. We're going to unpick along this inside seam here. You could cheat and you could cut it, and I'm going to see how I get on. However, would quite like to have the extra bit of fabric along this seam line here. So using our snips and our unpicker, I'm going to start to unpick this inside leg seam. So I've started cutting into it with the snips first, but I think I might use the unpicker so that I can just quickly go through it. So I've now unpicked the entire underleg seam, so it's completely open now. Next we're going to work on flattening out and joining the back. So what we're going to do is we're going to unpick more of the back seam, not all the way, but maybe sort of halfway, and then we're going to see how the curves lie flat together when they cross over. So I've now unpicked halfway up the back seam. Basically I've stopped around here, so it's not quite halfway, but what I was wanting us to flatten out was this curve of the crotch seam here, so that we could start to overlap them and lie them flat. Press out any folds from previous seams, we can get some more length here, but I'm going to leave the fold from the top layer so I can kind of keep in a bit of the shape of this curve as a feature. And you can see here that there is a bit of a triangle opening, because there's not enough width on the legs of the skirt. So I don't want you to just bring them together, because this will change the shape of your skirt and create a bit of a bulk shape around here. I want you to sort of see how they are when they lie flat. Luckily, because these are quite a wide leg trouser, when I have laid it all out flat and then I've measured again from the top of the waistband down to just where there starts to be a bit of an opening, so I've measured from the top of the waistband down to here, it's roughly around 40 centimetres, and remember we added on 5 centimetres as well for the shape. So I'm going to risk it. We'll see how short my skirt turns out to be, but I'm going to risk it and not add on an extra square down here. But that's what you could do if you wanted more length in the bottom of your skirt where it has this triangle opening. You can get maybe one of your trouser legs or a contrasting piece of fabric if you wanted to add a bit of colour in, and sew that in as well. I've kept that fold in. I've actually decided to keep this as a raw edge. I've pressed everything out, it's nice and flat. I've got the underlayer tucked in there, and I'm going to just start to pin along here and then along there, and I'm ready to get it under the sewing machine. So I'm going to try and do the 2 rows of stitching along here, but I don't have the exact matching thread that they use for sewing up jeans, so I'm just going to use maybe a contrasting colour, but it's just not going to be the same thickness, but that's fine because it's still secure and in place. So it might be easier to start from the bottom and work my way up, so I'm going to start from the raw edge side. So I'm going to start on the outside edge of my stitching, so along this side, and work my way up. And I'm going to do a reverse stitch down at the bottom and when I've made my way up to the top of the crotch, just to secure my stitching. Okay, so now we've sewn and attached the back, we're going to take the pins out, and you can see that it's all one piece now, it doesn't come apart. We're actually going to trim down the excess fabric on the inside, so it might help to turn it inside out at this point. And remember, we're only cutting through this one layer now. So I can see my stitch line vaguely, so I'm just going to cut just a little bit from the outside edge of that. And that's the back skirt done. So we're going to flip the skirt over, and now what we need to do is we're going to actually, because it's becoming a wrap skirt, we're going to open up this entire front seam. So it will be a bit tricky because we're going to be opening up at the fly. I'm actually going to take the zip out. I've had a bit of an idea of how to secure it later on when it's the wrap skirt, but at the moment we want it to open out completely so that we can wrap it round. Okay, so I've taken out the fly shield, I've undone the waistband as much as I can before the button kind of gets in the way, so I've got this bit nice and open, and then I've pressed out the fold that was in the fly top stitching, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually straighten out this edge as much as I can. So I've drawn roughly a straight line here. There's going to be seam allowance included in this, so we are taking off some of the width. However, like I say, we're adding a panel in. So let's go for it, and I'm going to cut off along the line I've just created. So I'm straight edge now, but I've still got enough space to get into the waistband, and basically I'm thinking my panel is going to be more triangular shaped, so it's going to start here and work its way out so that it can cover all when I wrap round. So I've fully unpicked the front of the skirt now, kept in some features of the fly for decorative purposes, as this is going to be the overlap half of the skirt, so I thought it might look nice. It's just a little bit bigger than my size, this skirt, but not enough to fully wrap round. It only actually wraps over about this much, so there's a lot of leg still showing, so I need to extend this side. I've had a bit of a plan with it, and I'm going to use one of the legs, and I'm actually going to use a lot of this leg as a design feature. So I'm just doing a quick zoom in so you can see it a bit better, but what I'm going to be doing is I've turned the straight leg on its side, and I'm going to use this part of the hem of the trousers as the side seam of my wrap skirt, and I'll be using this top seam here to incorporate into my waistband, so it will be extending out this way. So I've unpicked it now along this seam here at the back. I've cut around the button so it's out of the way, so if we lie it out flat, this will be the top of the skirt, the waistband, and this section here is going to be the extra bit that I'll be attaching on. So I'm actually going to trim down away from these buttons. Cut away the extra fabric now, so I don't need that. What we're going to do next is we're going to just secure this to look like a waistband, this extra piece here, so it matches before we attach it to our skirt. So we just need to do some measurements. Width of the waistband is just under 5 centimetres, and I want to measure down about 5.5 centimetres from this top bit. I've added on about 0.5 centimetre just so that we can tuck under any raw edges. So what we'll be doing next is we're going to get on the iron. Just want to tuck in about 0.5 centimetre under the raw edges to create that waistband line. And my new waistband that I've created here, so it's all tucked away with all the raw edges hidden, and I just want to stitch quite close to the folded edge. We've still got our machine on a straight stitch and a fairly short stitch, and I want to do a reverse stitching at either end of my seam. I've now cut off the extra bit of the waistband that has the button in place because we're going to be stitching along here, and I think the button will become obsolete, so which is a shame to not use it, but in order to get it off there would be a hole in the waistband. So I've moved it to the side. We can think about maybe what we could do with it later, but for now we're just going to concentrate on attaching our new waistband and extra width of the wrap skirt to the main skirt. We're going to be joining these two raw edges together, so we need to place our wrap skirt right sides together, our two pieces right sides together, do our best to line up this top waistband lines as neat as we can, and we'll pin those into place. Also, another thing to be aware of is I've unpicked this part of the waistband here, so I just want to make sure that that stays nice and flat, and we can fix that after we've attached it. I did that because actually I had a different idea for how to attach this length, but this one seems the most simple. So yeah, just pinning all this skirt together. I've also just quickly tucked in and hemmed our raw edges from our side seams as well. We're going to be adding a buttonhole to the underlayer of our wrap skirt. I've done a few back and forth reverse stitches just at the top here because this is where the waistband is, so it's going to get most of the pull from you know, wearing and all that kind of stuff. And then we're going to press the skirt panel open. So I've pressed my seam now. I've got all the raw edges and seam allowance facing in one direction, and now I'm going to stitch through all those layers of my seam allowance just to do a bit of top stitching and make this seam here more secure for the skirt. I'm just going to do a quick stitch along the waistband here. As I said before, I'd unpicked a bit of it, so I just want that to be nice and secure and reinforced so that the waistband doesn't just keep unravelling. Now we've got our extra panel added on to our skirt. We've got full width that's needed now for it to be a wrap round, but we need to sort out the hem and even out the length. So what we're going to be doing is turning our skirt so that the wrong side, the inside of our skirt, is facing up, and using that measurement we took at the beginning from my original skirt that I wear all the time, we're going to be measuring from the top down 42 centimetres plus some seam allowance. So I'm going to add on about 2 centimetres seam allowance. So I'll start with my centre seam, just that way we can make sure that this is the full length that we need. So 44 centimetres from the top edge, so there's the 44 line, so just enough, and then I'm just going to keep doing that. So I'll go this way first and keep moving my way along until we have our chalk line all the way around our skirt, and then we will trim that down. I've just pressed in a quick double rolled hem, so I've just folded it down once about 1 centimetre and then folded it over again around 1 centimetre and pressed it into place. I've now pinned it, ready to go under the sewing machine, and we're going to sew along close to the inside edge of the fold. This is the waistband section here, and I'm actually going to do my buttonhole vertically this time because there's too much bulk on this side. Using a 4-stage buttonholer on this machine. And then that is our buttonhole finished. We just need to cut it open. I'm just going to show you now how to open up that buttonhole using our unpicker and our pins. I put a pin on the inside of either of those bridges. Then we're going to take our unpicker, carefully try and poke through the centre of our buttonhole and cut in. And because those pins are there, we shouldn't go too far. So that is our buttonhole opened up. You can check that our button goes through, which it does. And now we just need to put our button into place. So I previously wrapped the skirt around me and checked where we want our button to be. And we're going to be sewing our button onto the inside because when our wrap comes through, it'll be placed on the inside of our waistband here. And there we have it. I've finished my upcycled trousers into a wrap skirt. I've got the button secured into place on the underlayer. I've threaded the original tie through the buttonhole that was in the fly. It feels very secure. I've kept all the pockets and I'm pretty happy with it. So now it's gone from an item I wouldn't wear and maybe would have got rid of to something I'm looking forward to wearing.